Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you. I'm Alecia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is
Twisted and Uncorked. What did you do?
I've been using self tanner,
Oh.
like tan lotion, and
I was thinking you looked a little bronzy today.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so the first two times I used it, I did it wrong. Because it's, every type is different, but the first two times I did it, I put it on, I waited like 20 minutes and then I took a shower. Because some types you're supposed to put on, let it bronze you, and then wash it off.
Yeah.
And I used like this soap that I got for tanning. It's like it doesn't take off the bronze, it just cleans you.
Yeah.
So I was using that and I still wasn't getting any tanner. And I was like, I don't think I'm doing this right. So like I read the back again. I read it the first time. Okay. I don't know how it changed, but it was different the second time. You are supposed to leave it on and let it dry. Like you're supposed to take a shower, then put it on and let it dry on you. So I just did it because I plan on taking a shower early in the morning tomorrow, and I didn't want to,
wash it off.
Whatever. Yeah, because we're going on drive tomorrow. So to Georgia. And so I put it on like an hour ago and let it dry, and I feel like I didn't rub it all in all the way. So I was like, oh. Trying to rub it in a little more. Sorry.
Good.
Anyway.
I was like, what was that TV show? Was it Ross? It's Ross, isn't it? Isn't it in Friends when he goes to the self tanner and he gets the spray tan and he's supposed to count to 3 and then turn around and he counts?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
At least you didn't have that situation. Yeah. Make sure you count Mississippi and don't turn orange.
I'm 28 now. I am going to live my best life. My best life is tan. Okay.
Oh yeah. I keep looking at hi guys. Welcome to an episode of Twisted and
Uncorked
where we talk about
ourselves
tanner and ourselves. But you're here for all of the above. This is episode 34, which feels wild.
Ooh,
we're just moving on up. Okay. Sorry guys. We love you and all, but we need to talk too. And we've got lots of stuff that we're holding back right now, so you're welcome. Yes, fun fact. Tell me.
Okay, so my fun fact is also a correction from my episode last week. So
is it about the mothership?
No, this is just something that I said in the story that I shouldn't have said. / was not PC, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, let me just tell you. So
sorry guys, my upstairs neighbors are showering, if you can hear that.
It's just raining above me.
It's raining inside my house.
So the fun fact is, obviously we all know BC means before Christ and AD means after death, right? We're living in AD right now. Things that happened BC was before Christ.
Except when Alecia says BC, she's referring to British Columbia where she lives.
Right.
Just to clarify.
In the episode last week, I said that Albielic traveled to 100,000 BC. And BC, meaning before Christ, is not what you're supposed to say anymore. Obviously, BC, before Christ, that is very religion-based, very Christianity-based. And not the whole world is Christians as much as America likes to think they are.
I noticed that when we were in Kentucky. I'm like, there's a lot of religious stuff around. I'm upset about it, but
it's fine. It's fine if you are religious, but don't force it on people. And that's why this fun fact is me telling you that the correct way to say that now that people are realizing don't force religion on people, is BCE, which means before Common Era, and CE, which is Common Era. So we are living in CE right now.
I like it.
And so Albielic actually traveled to 100,000 BCE. And I apologize for using BC. So that's my correction and fun fact.
but we learned something new.
After I listened to the episode, I heard myself say it and I was like, why did I do that? Like, I learned this in college like 4 years ago. I know not to say that. Why did I
actually have never
and
learned
it's just
that.
part of the research.
Yeah.
So. Oh, really?
Exactly.
I learned it in my religion class. So it was like history.
Kind of like
religion.
when we say prostitute instead of sex worker. It's often part of the research or the time research in which we were talking about. So
I didn't mean it that way. Yeah.
Our listeners know that you are very sensitive. So we are very sensitive, but I'm glad I learned that because I actually didn't know that. And I hate saying before Christ. So
yes,
I'm glad I learned a new way to tell
before Common Era.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, before Common Era. I like it. My fun fact is not in front of my face at the moment, 2 seconds, is about surgery. I read this fact and it kind of was like the average number of arms situation / average number of humans situation with pregnancy. So the fastest surgeon ever ended up causing a 300% mortality rate. Shocking, right? So surgeon Robert Liston was considered the fastest knife in the West. He was a pioneer in speed surgery, and when performing a battlefield amputation in front of a group of spectators, he accidentally cut through his patient's leg so quickly that he cut his own fingers, he accidentally cut through the patient's leg so quickly and cut through the person that was helping him, like hold the patient down's fingers. The man who witnessed the surgery collapsed and died of a heart attack. And the person that was helping him died of blood poisoning because of the mixture between his wound and holding this patient down. So that made him the only surgeon in history to ever have a 300% mortality rate because 3 people died within that surgery.
Wow.
I know it's so dark, but I read it and I was like, so you killed your assistant, you killed your patient, and you killed a random spectator because it was horrified by what was happening.
All because you wanted to be fast. Listen,
all because you wanted to be the fastest knife in the West. Was it worth it?
Haven't you ever heard of the tortoise and the hare?
Yes, right?
Slow and steady wins the race. Gosh.
Almost said waste. But it's true. So I just thought that was interesting. And obviously that was during, World War times when people were forced to kind of do what they could on the spot. But he moved a little too quickly.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, so that's my fun fact is don't have a 300% mortality rate as a surgeon. It's not a good look.
Slow and steady wins the race.
It's a good rule to live by. So today we are drinking a canned wine. It is our first canned wine that we've ever covered on the show. We are supposed to be drinking Underwood Bubbly Rosé, which comes in a really bright, pretty pink can, which I think Sierra is drinking from. Show it for the class. If you guys aren't watching this on YouTube, go check it out. Subscribe to our channel there. Sometimes you just want something in the background on TV. It could be us. Okay. Mine is just the Underwood Rosé, which comes in a darker can and is in my recycling bin, so you don't get to see it because I tried to make mine bubbly with Sierra by adding a little bit of soda water. So that's what I am drinking now. And this sparkling pink wine can delight with aromas of wild strawberry and citrus blossom, tart cherry, lemongrass. And it overall comes with a balanced palate. So I think it should be easy sipping. What do you think?
Pretty good. Very bubbly.
Very bubbly.
Yeah. Do you see my my koozie?
Yes, it's so cute.
More booze, please.
Where did you get that? I love it so much.
Target in the one spot. Oh my God, you guys. Canada doesn't have Target.
Canada tried to have Target, but Canada wasn't ready for Target and they went out of business here.
It's insane.
Mm-hmm. I was so excited. I shopped at Target. My fellow Canadians weren't with me on that mission, so sorry.
It's crazy. Crazy.
or as we call it in my family, Target.
Mhm.
I just had one fun little fact about rosés. In France, it's called rosé, which has been adopted in the Western society, but in Italy, they're called Roscato. Or sorry, in Italy, they're called Rosado, and in Spain, it's called Rosato. So like one in Spain, it's spelled with a D, and in Italy, it's spelled with a T. But before I get into my case today, just a quick reminder to leave a 5-star rating and review. 75% of our listeners are listening on Apple Podcasts. What are you guys doing? Come on.
Did you get us birthday presents?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Leave the review. That's what we want for our birthday.
That's what we
Thank
want
you.
for our birthday so much. Thank you so much. And we are doing a special topic today. And you know what comes next after special topic, guys. But this round, our listeners on Instagram, as well as our patrons, did the final vote for crimes that appeared to be caused by vampires. So this was super fun because Sierra and I are obviously, fun or fans of vampirism and, Vampire Diaries and the Western versions of it. I'm a huge fan of Dracula. I have that book on my bookshelf. Like it's just a range. So for my case, I changed my case like 1,800 times. I pulled a Sierra, but I landed on 2 cases. So I kind of told Sierra about this the other day that I'm doing 2 short cases. Both were supposed to originate in Europe, but the second one that I started researching, I'm actually going to save for a future Patreon urban legend. So we do those for $1 a month on Patreon and up. So go check that out if you're wanting some extra content, some extra twisted content, and some spooky stories. So I'm going to save it for that. The reason why is because I couldn't find it in any hard news articles. It was always referred to as a legend or the story says, and it's really creepy. So I wanted to cover it, but I didn't want to put off something as being fact when it might not be. So that's where we are. So I kind of switched it up a little bit. One case takes place in Europe and the other takes place in the US. So with that said, I will start in Europe with the younger of the 2 cases. I know I'm going backwards order today.
Younger in Europe? That's strange.
Right? My case in the US
because Europe is so much older. I mean, the US is so much younger than Europe.
What? Switzerland is not in Europe, is it?
It's on the European continent.
Is Sweden also on the European continent?
Yes.
Okay. So is it considered European?
It's not America, if that's what you mean. It is 100% not
I just had
America.
This moment of panic where I was like, maybe that's not.
Is that where the second one is?
No, that's where my first story takes place, is in Sweden. Yeah. Thank you, Sierra, for always checking my geography. It's not my strong suit, guys. Geology is, geography is not. In Sweden, in the spring of 1932, a killer roamed the streets dubbed the Atlas Vampire. Have you ever heard of this?
Yes.
You have heard of it?
Only because I was trying to find a vampire case, and that's one of the one I found. I didn't go into it, but yes, I've heard of it.
So this vampire, this blood drinker, was never caught. This case remains one of the strangest, most bizarre cold cases in history in Northern Europe. It is Northern Europe. I should have doubted myself, guys. God. So on May 4th, 1932, Stockholm police were called to the home of Lily Lindstrom. She was a 32-year-old sex worker, and she is referred to in media and in this case coverage as just a prostitute. Not a lot is known of her, which is really heartbreaking because she was more than a prostitute. However, I tried my best to find anything else about her, and all I could find was that she was just really kind and she did whatever she could to get by. So that's all I can tell you about Lily.
Yeah.
Lily was something of a novelty in Stockholm in 1932. She'd kind of upgraded from her streetwalker days looking for Johns on the street to a call girl. So clients contacted her in order to arrange, So a little sassy
She
time at her
fancy.
apartment. She fancy, exactly. And at the time, Lily lived in Atlas, a neighborhood of Stockholm, part of what is known today as Vasastan. So if anybody is listening from Sweden and knows that area, let us know, because that would be kind of cool. When police detectives entered Lily's apartment, obviously she was found dead. She had suffered blunt force trauma to the head. But more disturbingly was the fact that investigators found traces of saliva on her neck and body, and the scene contained a blood-stained gravy ladle next to her body.
Oh, yes. Oh, I'm remembering. Gross.
Which is eerie in itself. The killer became known quickly as the Atlas vampire for one reason. One, the area that she lived in was known as Atlas, like I said. And two, the detectives that first responded to the scene suspected that he had drank Lily's blood after he killed her. One, because of the bloodstained ladle, and two, because of the lack of pooling blood in her body and the lack of blood that was around her. So her body had been drained. Like, despite the brutality of the scene, there was no blood really at the scene. And either he drank it all at the scene using this ladle and, just his mouth, which would explain the saliva, or he somehow stored it in a container and removed it from the scene. So I'm thinking it's the first one. Love you, 1932 police detectives, but nobody's putting blood into a freaking Tupperware container and carrying it out of a building. Just saying.
Actually, on Vampire Diaries, they have coolers full of blood. So
it's true.
I beg to differ.
It's possible.
I pick number 2.
It's possible. I'm just picturing like an old school like vampire burglar with his Tupperware of blood. But possible, because a human body contains a lot of blood, so it would take you some time to consume it.
I wonder if any of her pots were missing.
Right?
He just put it all in like a crock pot, right? Took a crock pot with him,
carried it out to have later.
It's like, it's just my casserole.
It's fine.
Nothing to see here.
She didn't want it. I forgot she was allergic to
soup.
Onions. It's fine. Lily was popular in her profession. Like I said, she had kind of upgraded herself to this call girl, but it unfortunately made tracking down any possible suspects difficult to police. This started to become the most plausible pool of suspects because they would be in her home and they would have access to her alone and in a vulnerable setting. So this seemed the most plausible chain of events, but obviously at this point, investigators weren't sure. The last person that saw Lily alive was her downstairs neighbor. She was she was a 35-year-old prostitute as well. Her name was Minnie Jansen, which is Minnie, so cute.
Yeah.
She told police that Lily had stopped by her apartment a few days prior to the murder to get some condoms. Like, can I borrow a few?
Yes.
Not borrow, because I'm not getting them back.
I'm remembering this story more and more, and it's
and it's bonkers because there's like not a lot. My second story is a little bit longer. So Minnie had told police that it was common for sometimes a nude Lily to come to her door to request condoms. However, after not seeing Lily over the next day and into the next, she grew increasingly worried and called Stockholm's police department. Besides being drained of all the blood in her body, Lily's corpse had been found laying face down on her bed, and she was nude. Her clothes were folded and located on a chair neatly next to her bed, which is kind of creepy. I hate it when people fold clothes.
Reminds me of the Ripper. Check out our Patreon.
Gross. Yes. And you know what? Yes, check that out on Patreon. Casual plug. But this entire case, other than the vampirism aspect, totally reminded me of the Ripper. Like them only referring to her as a prostitute and that kind of stuff. Like, we know in history that, sex workers are considered less dead by investigators because they're considered less human. If anything, that makes them more human to me. They're doing what they need to survive. So fuck off.
Right.
But detectives noted that judging based on the decomposition rates of her body, she'd probably been dead a few days prior to being discovered. So Minnie was right on track with her not seeing her and it being a cause for alarm. It was also theorized that Lily's killer had likely sexually assaulted her, or the sex had taken place post-mortem. They weren't able to tell. This conclusion was reached because the way that her body was staged, there was a condom hanging out of her butt, which is sad to me. So she had obviously been sodomized, either consensually or not.
Right.
So Stockholm police immediately focused their attention on the men who frequented Lily's bedroom, like I said. After much legwork, they were able to track down the last 9 men that Lily had serviced. All were interviewed extensively by detectives. The names of these suspects, however, were never released because the police let them go. None of them proved to be a viable suspect or a person that could commit a crime quite this grisly, which, like, interviews alone, it's 1932. I got to remind myself of that, but it's like killers can charm. So, but I mean, like, can vampire humans charm as well as just regular
literally
assholes?
That's one of their powers is
that
charming.
they're charming. Yeah.
Have you ever seen Twilight?
Yes, that's true. So they're charming. So they probably had their suspect in their midst and they didn't even know.
Yeah.
But for all intents and purposes, this is kind of where the case of the Atlas vampire ends. There's no serious leads, no viable suspects, and no conclusion. All of the evidence that was gathered at the home of Lily Lindstrom, Stockholm detectives collected and can currently be found at the Swedish Police Museum, which I would be really interested to visit one day. And the exhibit includes the hair sample that was found, the saliva samples that were found on Lily's body, as well as one of the condoms that was found, in addition to the blood-stained ladle and their theories. While often overlooked because Sweden didn't fight in World War I or seriously take part in any part of the post-war international agreements, Sweden, pretty much like every other country in Europe, suffered during the Great Depression. However, it wasn't given as much attention. But by 1931, so a year before Lily was found dead, Swedish wages had fallen and continued falling for quite some time. Unemployment rose, and after the production in Sweden fell by 10%, unemployment rose beyond 12%, so it makes sense. But outside of Stockholm and some other cities, Sweden was mostly an agricultural society, and because of the high unemployment rates due to the Great Depression and low crop yields, many of the Swedes from the countryside relocated to Stockholm to find work, to be able to get anything that they could during this, thus giving the city a whole subpopulation of travelers. Lily's killer may have also, and vampires. Lily's killer may have been one of these drifters and not somebody who was a client of theirs, of hers. However, there's no official way to know.
Right.
Because it's 1932, guys. By most modern standards, Lily's bedroom was actually, flooded with evidence. The murderer's saliva was found on her body, semen in the condom, fingerprints on the soup ladle that was allegedly used to drink her blood. But of course, in 1932, there was no such thing as DNA testing, and Stockholm detectives back then didn't understand the significance of DNA during their investigation. And during that time, most murders were solved thanks to confessions and, public account. So since DNA was not a point of priority in police work then, the samples have long since been contaminated, and it's unlikely that a clear enough sample will ever be extracted from these items, which is really sad.
I always wondered when and why the person was like, you know what, I'm going to keep this DNA just in case one day we can read it.
Right?
Like, it must have been a time traveler.
It had to have been a time traveler.
Like,
how else did they figure that out? Look at how they handled
Why
this
would
case.
they
They're
decide
like,
to keep that?
oh, there's
Right.
semen
That
in
makes
here,
more
but-
sense to me.
Yeah.
That makes more sense to me because it literally was not like they didn't know it existed.
Yeah.
Like,
so they didn't know
when
that they
did
were
people
fucking
decide
it
to
up.
start storing it? That's so weird.
Yeah, I know.
Time travel
But
is
the
real.
reason that this is stored is one, because it's a famous murder that occurred in Sweden.
Mhm.
And because it was committed by an alleged vampire, because why else was all of the blood gone from her body?
Exactly.
And it is hoped that through the preservation in the museum of what exists of the evidence, and developments in testing, that enough of a clear sample can be pulled from these objects and they can finally identify the Swedish Atlas vampire. But at this point, we have no idea who it is.
Yeah.
And that is story number 1, guys.
How crazy would it be if they eventually do get to read that DNA and it turns out that it's someone who's still alive and like 20 years old?
Oh my god. Okay, see
Vampires!
that will 100% confirm that this was a vampire.
So you know how
By
like obviously witches are in lore spooky magic and they fly on a broom, but witches in real life are like all
everyday
of us.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, apparently there is vampirism in real life. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I watched a show about it. I think it was on Dark Tourist, where there are a group of people who flat out will come out and tell you, yes, I'm a vampire. Yes, I drink blood. It's my friend right here who is also a vampire. She drinks my blood. It's basically like a kink of theirs, and they
Okay.
actually drink each other's blood.
Okay.
So,
I could see
you know,
that.
You do you,
I could see that.
but
Makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to actually drink the blood, but I'll bite your neck.
yeah, blood is like it's like sucking on pennies, you know?
Yeah. Has anybody
Not
ever bit
great.
their tongue? So, story number 2. Have you heard of the New England vampire girl?
No.
Oh,
It's
story
a
number
girl.
2.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, it actually could be hundreds of people, ending with this girl, but you'll see. So
Okay.
we know that tales of vampires have existed for thousands of years. An undead or live person draining the life from the living in various ways. But this story takes kind of a unique turn and causes you to really think about our events in history. So buckle up, twisted humans. This one's a little wild.
Awesome.
Over 100 years ago, a little town known as Exeter in Rhode Island felt that they were being terrorized by vampires. People mysteriously falling ill, becoming weak, and bedridden within a matter of hours. One family, the Brown family, was all too familiar with this pattern, and her story continues today. One member of this Brown family. The mother of the family, her name was Mary Eliza. She was the first person to die of this mysterious illness.
Maybe they just had COVID.
Maybe. In 1886, though, I don't think so.
Yeah, and now it's just coming back.
It was COVID round 1. Now we've come full
Yes.
circle. She was the first to die in the Brown family, followed later in 1886 by their eldest daughter, Mary Olive. In 1891, a few years later, their youngest daughter, Mercy Lena, fell ill and died at the age of 19. The surviving family members, the father George and their son Edwin, were obviously heartbroken by losing their mother and 2 siblings / daughters, and they moved on and continued with their life the best that they were able to. Unfortunately, a few months later, their son Edwin had started to become sick as well. He started coughing. He started feeling very weak. He started becoming very pale. And he was just all around unwell. Obviously, unwilling to lose all of his children, George did whatever he could to be able to save his son Edwin. Took him to every good doctor in the town, every priest, everyone.
He wore his mask.
He wore his mask. Exactly. As they began talking to various townsfolk, they started to suspect that Edwin was sick from something else, that perhaps one of their deceased family members was actually a vampire and was draining their last family member's life forces. So his mom and his two sisters have died from the same illnesses. Now he's caught it and he's starting to feel weak. In March of 1892, we did not jump 100 years. March 17th, 1892, George Brown allowed a doctor and two priests to dig up his family's cemetery in order to investigate this possible theory that one of them might be a vampire. Mary Eliza, the mother of the family, had been dead 9 years at this point. Her body was exhumed. And I will note that George was allowing this to happen, but he was not there. And neither was Edwin. Neither of them wanted to see their mom and their siblings. You're like, you know what? I'm sick. You're going to explore this theory to get me better. So,
yeah.
So Mary had been dead 9 years at this point, and when they opened her casket, they found skeletal remains, much of what you would find. The next body that they dug up was Mary Olive. There was a little bit more hair on her skull than expected after being buried for almost 9 years, but nothing too crazy. So they're like, sorry for disturbing you. They buried her again.
Mm-hmm.
Mercy Lena Brown was the last of the three that had died and the last of the three to be exhumed. When they opened the coffin, after what they expected, they expected to see what a body that has been dead for 2 months to show. However, there was no signs of decomposition at all.
Well, it was only
at
2
all.
months.
2 months, but at all?
If it was cold in the ground,
was like, she wasn't buried yet. Sorry, I didn't mention that. She was actually in like the family, whatever those little temples are called.
Like a crypt or tomb.
Yeah, she was actually kept in there. She wasn't buried yet. But Mercy didn't even look like she was dead. They found fresh blood in her mouth. And when they opened up her chest cavity, they found fresh blood that had been pumped through her heart. Not congealed, not dried in any way, completely fresh.
Maybe she just died that day. Maybe they put her in there too soon and she died.
And it took her 2 months to suffocate.
Starvation or something. Yeah. God, poor thing.
I know. Terrible. And she was 19. But she was also not in the same position that she had been buried in.
Exactly, because she was trying to get out. She was alive. You killed her.
No, she was a vampire, Sierra, okay?
Right, she was a vampire.
She had been buried like most people are, face up, and their head the right way in the coffin, but she was found the other way and on her chest, as if she had tried to crawl back into her coffin.
Mm.
So the doctor and the two priests felt that this vampire had finally been found. They took Mercy Lena's organs and they burned them into a powder, collected it, mixed it with water, and had Edwin drink the water, hopefully to, evade him of this vampirism curse that was running through his family.
They thought that her blood was the cure?
That her organs
Catherine
burned were the cure. That was what they thought. Mercy Lena was not by any means the first vampire that Exeter felt that they had to deal with. She was actually the last. Previously, over 80 other graves had been exhumed under the suspicion of vampirism. People would be fine one moment, like I said, and then be coughing up blood, mucus, bedridden, drained of all their energy, and basically lifeless the next day. All of these rituals were done to stop the vampires following the same pattern. So the bodies were dug up in the middle of the night, their internal organs harvested, burned. The burned ashes of these organs collected and mixed into water for those that were infected by the vampires to drink. Sometimes the heart was burned separately in the center of the town with spectators surrounding it. Over in Massachusetts, I practice saying this. Over in Massachusetts, they had a different method or a different ritual to stop the vampires from draining life from their townsfolk. Instead, they would exhume the bodies and flip them over onto their stomachs, much like how Mercy Lena's body was found. So it's possible that somebody may have beat the two priests and the doctor to the punch. Maybe other people were experiencing the same draining effects after Mercy had died, and somebody else took it upon themselves to try and break the curse. Obviously, that didn't work because of her brother Edwin. What are you feeling right now?
I feel like these people were not great doctors during this time.
It's 18.
They did not know what dead people looks like.
It's 1800s. Yeah. But how do you explain the blood in her system? So
the bodies weren't embalmed. It's the 1800s. There's blood in there. So part of the decomp process is like still gases. The gases making the blood mix and bubble, and I mean it's gross and it's spooky. But to me, that's not what a vampire is. Vampires don't have blood, first of all. They heal themselves. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
her mouth wouldn't
if
be
they
bleeding.
drink blood, you would find it in their mouth.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know.
Unfortunately, there's no way to really know. And this vampire panic seemed to end after Mercy Lena. Today, she is the subject of many of our pop culture references in vampirism. Her grave is still heavily visited today with offerings of vampire teeth, bags of blood, amongst various other, vampire loved things. Some people believe that the New England vampire panic was simply a response to the spread and high mortality rate of tuberculosis, or consumption, as it's sometimes called.
Yeah.
Maybe it was. But how do you explain Mercy Lena's liveliness? How do you explain the fact that she didn't look dead at all after 2 months, and the blood that was fresh still in her mouth after she died? Sorry, the blood that was found fresh in her mouth after she was exhumed. When she died, she was beloved, obviously. She was cleaned, and she was buried in her best way. Full makeup, best dress, all of that. How do you explain
she was just unconscious
or that? Other spectators believe that past tuberculosis being the cause of the deaths around, but specifically with Mercy Lena, that she may have not been 100% dead before she was locked in her coffin, and that some of this blood may have been an attempt to escape, as well as the position that her body was found in when she was exhumed.
Mm-hmm.
As many know, in the 1800s, it was very difficult to 100% ascertain death within a person, and there was many inventions spread all over graves that were designed to alert the living to anybody that may have been buried before their time, such as the bell. Many old grave sites have bells next to every grave. That bell string was in their grave and in their coffin, designed to ring it if they weren't alive for whatever reason. If anybody has seen
if they weren't dead.
Yes. There's also
ring it if you're not alive.
Yeah. Conjuring and the
Warrens.
Yeah, the Warrens, those movies. What is that one? They made one called The Priest. And if anybody's ever seen that, it's super creepy. Or sorry, The Nun. It's called The Nun. It's super creepy, and it exhibits
Is that
exactly
the recent
what
one?
Yes. And it exhibits exactly what I'm talking about. They go to an old Catholic church. There's a burial ground in the background, and part of the haunting that he experiences is all the bells start ringing, which is really creepy, obviously in a horror movie setting. But one bell ringing would indicate to people that work on the grave sites that maybe they prematurely buried someone. So it's up to you, listeners. What do you think? Do you think that this New England vampire panic was a real thing? Do you think that Mercy Lena had drained the blood of all of her family members? Or do you think that it was simply a case of consumption or tuberculosis spreading through the town, ending with her brother Edwin, who did miraculously survive?
That's gross.
That's gross.
That he survived by drinking the ashes of his sister.
I have to wonder if they told him what was in that water. Like, so those are my 2 short, possibly caused by vampire stories.
They're really good. I
hope
like
you
them.
enjoyed them, even though they were short.
Yeah.
And they kind of make you think. The Atlas vampire, I completely
That one was totally a vampire.
That was totally a vampire.
For sure.
The Brown family, it's more likely that it was just a spread of tuberculosis.
They just murdered their daughter on accident.
Or that. But the blood found in her mouth that was still completely liquefied is the grossest
She had
part
just
to me
died 5 minutes ago. Okay.
Not 2 months
They
ago.
killed her. Yeah.
Oops. So
Oops.
let us know what you guys think. The New England vampire girl is used, like I said, Mercy Lena, in many pop culture references today. Her gravesite is still heavily visited by tourists because of fear that this curse in this town will happen again. And people will just start dropping dead like flies. So there's no way to know officially, but I'm hoping that DNA testing comes full force and you're able to test even the smallest possibly contaminated patches of DNA and be able to find out who this Atlas vampire was. And RIP to most of the Brown family, because that's really sad that they lost their mom and 2 sisters if it wasn't because of vampirism and it was just because of the 1800s and consumption. So it's possible all around. But, over 80 graves were dug up. So, but we know that in the 1800s, especially in Catholicism, vampires were considered to be more demons than kind of the glorified forms that we see in Western society today. The sexy ones like Damon Salvatore. So it's possible. Who knows? And one day when Sierra and I inevitably travel to Sweden, we will go to the Swedish Police Museum and see this bloodstained ladle and nastiness for ourselves. Yes. Hell yeah. I want to see it. Be a cool exhibit to visit, but very sad. And guys, a reminder that sex workers are people too. Okay.
Yeah. Probably the best
reading old newspaper articles about people that work in
they are
sex work.
Entrepreneurs.
Yes. They're smarter than the rest of us. They probably make way more money.
Yeah.
But yeah. Let us know your thoughts, especially on the New England vampire girl, because I'm curious to see how open your minds are and what you think happened there. And a reminder as well to rate, review, and subscribe, because that's what we want for our birthday. We want you to leave that rating. We will do future draws and fun stuff, but for now, we hope you love us enough just to leave that review. Leave us an emoji if you don't feel like writing something. We're good with that too. Follow us on all of the social medias. We are Twisted and Uncorked across the board, except for Twitter. We are Twisted_pod. We also have a Patreon that you can sign up for and explore all sorts of fun, spooky, twisted, extra bonus content, from urban legends to our tarot reading with our friend Carly from Haunted Housewives to our spirit guide reading from Tara from Haunted Housewives.
Yeah.
Both very cool videos for you guys to check out. Starting at $3 a month. We also do monthly bonus episodes and weekly series recaps and discussions. And right now we are covering The Ripper, which was very much like Lily Lindstrom-esque. Yeah, we hope you check it out. We also have a website that you can check out all of the photos and resources that we use for our website. You can also listen to the episodes there if you feel so inclined and you don't want to use Spotify or anything like that. And yeah, that's it. That's all. What day is it today, Sierra?
Today is September 28th. This is the last episode of September. So now we are like full-blown spooky season, okay? But today we will celebrate the sentencing of racist serial killer Joseph Paul Franklin, who was sentenced to life on this day in 1981. Maybe we'll cover him someday.
Maybe. Bye.
Bye.
I'm good with that. I'm good with him being locked away. And as always, guys, follow us everywhere. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next week for Sierra's special topic vampire episode. And in the meantime, keep it twisted.
Thank you for listening to Twisted and Uncorked Podcast. Remember, if you like the show, to go leave us a 5-star rating and review. We couldn't do it without you guys. Now stay tuned to hear about another cool podcast.
Hey guys, this is the Tipsy Ghost, and we are Sarah, and Lindsay.
We are 3 best friends with a podcast about true crime, paranormal, and a little bit of everything, including UFOs, conspiracies, and cryptids.
But our favorite thing to do is go to haunted locations and investigate.
Right. 2 of us are believers, though, and 1 of us not so much.
I resent that comment. How dare you? I think we do a pretty good job about balancing my skepticism with you guys' hardcoreness.
True. We do gather a lot of evidence, but we also do a lot of debunking, and we try to keep it real for you guys.
You'll always get our honest feedback, but we will tell you guys all about the places, the history, the evidence, and the fun we had.
And we have a lot of fun, you guys. We like to drink, we like to sing, and we like to practice our accents pretty poorly as we discuss places around the world.
So if you like to talk about all things creepy, drink, and laugh your pants off, then come be friends with us.
We release new episodes every Sunday. Come find us at thetipsyghost.com or anywhere that you listen to your podcasts.
Okay, bye.
Bye.